Okay, we're back. It's, gee whiz, it's Wednesday already. And we have a special guest today, Mitch Dollier. He is the director of the Harold K.L. Castle Foundation, and he has been with Kaneohe Ranch and Victoria Ward, and going way back now, the Anderson firm, the Anderson law firm.
Goodsell, Anderson, Quinn, and Stifel.
Yeah.
And that goes way back.
Way back. That's where I met you originally. It's a long time
That's right,
ago.
no, that's right, Jay.
Anyway, so this is Community Matters. We're talking about community today with Mitch, and I've named it, and you'll see why. Captains of industry need jobs too. That's like a triple entendre, I think. We like multiple entendres. But let's talk about you for a minute. You know, you, in my view, and you can argue if you want, you are a captain of industry. One of the most captain of industry I have known in my career, my life here in Honolulu. So we are honored to have you on the show, Mitch.
Yeah. I'm lucky to have known you and had your help over the years, Jay. I think there's captains of industry in Honolulu. I don't think I qualify, but I'm okay. Honored to have you say that.
So, you know, in your current operation, current position, I guess I would say retired from a lot of serious business deals.
Right.
You know, you're now doing more community outreach than you've done, but you've always been interested in community outreach, and that's what we're here to talk about. And I think it's, you know, it's important to find out what drives you to do that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I don't get asked a whole lot. I mean, part of the answer to that is I have been mentored by a lot of leaders in Hawaii that I watched give back to community over time. And I am who and what I am because of my mentors. Started with Marshall Goodsell at the Goodsell firm, but a whole lot of others too. And all of them uniformly did things to make the community better. And it's just kind of how the tradition is here. And you could talk about the current real captains of industry, and they're doing the same thing. So that's part of it. Second part of it, I'm blessed with 3 granddaughters. When I look in the faces of my granddaughters, I know that we need this to be a great place for them. And so what can we do to deal with the problems that we have and the challenges and opportunities that Hawaii have? Yeah. How can we make Hawaii a better place? Yeah. It's just kind of a combination of both those things.
Yeah. But you know, inherent in that, it seems to me, is a recognition that there are issues. Oh, that we have issues.
There are issues.
You know, it's not all a halcyon,
perfect
utopia experience.
Hello, no, it's not. I mean, this is the most wonderful place in the world. You know, I came here 44 years ago, I'll die here. But this place, we need to nurture it and care for it, or we're not going to have the community that we've had over the years.
Why don't you, you're going to love this question, why don't you give us a few minutes on how it has changed in 40, 45 years, what you've watched?
I mean, I've watched a bunch of things change. I've seen corporate agriculture, which as a youngster, I represented in the face of some of the companies that were here that I was lucky enough to do work for, go away. I mean, Alexander and Baldwin is the last of the big 5 companies that still has a sugar operation. Sugar used to be everywhere. And so I saw a bunch of jobs disappear. I've seen, this is going to date you and me, okay? When I started practicing law here, there weren't even fax machines. We would get information by telex. And I watched faxes and then email, and then the digital world explode. I watched my ability to stay in touch with the world grow exponentially. That's a good thing and a bad thing for lawyers. I mean, lawyers in Hawaii had it pretty nice for a little while because other guys couldn't practice here. Yeah. The big LA and New York guys couldn't get here because it's just too far.
Yeah.
And
we treated you know, practice without a license more seriously then. Somewhere along the lines that went away.
No, I think we did. But I mean, technology's exploded all over us, and I don't even understand all the technology that's here now, because we've gone from cell phone technology and digital technology on email and pads to the cloud, and it's not slowing down.
Yeah.
And so how do we, 2,500 miles from anywhere, keep up with that is one of the real interesting questions. I've also seen the density in construction of this place increase. There's more buildings between Waikiki and downtown than there used to be. A little of that is my fault for my time at Victoria Ward.
I do want to talk about that.
No, well, we could, but I mean, that's another change. And we have a cost problem for Hawaii residents. It's like, how do we keep the cost of being in Hawaii down? We have a residential home problem in how do we have enough units for our people? I mean, at the beginning of the homelessness crisis, it's a question of units. And do we have enough units for all the people? And obviously we don't. Mitch happens to think we zoned ourselves into that problem. That might be a controversial statement. But I've seen that problem develop, and and I'm trying to figure out, am I just older and paying more attention? Or is that more of a problem? Now, I also see opportunities around mass transit and the ability to do more density in the already urbanized areas along the mass transit line as a potential solution.
Yeah, yeah.
So I see challenges and I see solutions.
Yeah. You know, I was thinking about this show. You know, we were talking earlier about how do you prepare for a show with Mitch Tellier. Well,
how do you prepare for a show with Jay Fidel is equally a good question.
And you know, you think about it, and you think, you know, what are the touch points? What are the points you want to know from Mitch Tellier? And I have this vision. I remember you in your office. You were always so dynamic. You're action man. That was the other possible title for this.
Hyperactive might be a good word.
Okay. To me, you know, you were able to find out what needed to be done and do it right now. And that is a tremendous thing, and it's not all that, you know, ubiquitous in Hawaii. It's kind of unique. And so I envision you, for example, in your office in Victoria Ward there, which was so alive with energy and action, deciding one day, you're going to build that sucker up. You know, you're going to make it happen. And I wonder if you could describe your decision process on that.
Well, any company in a decision-making process is complex. First thing is you have a team around you. I was blessed at Ward to have a great team. I had great finance people, great leasing people, great property management people, great support staff.
I absolutely agree.
And so that's where it starts. Second thing you have is supervision by a board of directors with fiduciary responsibility. Third thing is owners. So you have all that in a dynamic. So part of it is, what do we want to do as a team? Do the plan. Then share it first with the board, then with the owners. If you got unanimity, then the question becomes, how do you execute with community, and what are the things you have to do to deal with community? And you got to bring the community along, or development in Hawaii doesn't work without community.
Community socialization.
Yeah.
I was there, you know. It was at the Pacific Club one day, and you were rolling out your plan.
Right.
And I knew it was historic the minute I walked in.
Okay.
You had a film running, and it was the promotional film that you always see in
Consolidated theaters.
Consolidated theaters.
Yeah, I had fun with
very
that.
Hawaiian, you know.
Well, it's like, well, you know, you talk about that whole thing in the entertainment center, which was a whole lot of fun. And the Pacific Theaters guys that owned Consolidated, they were great partners.
Yeah.
And they would share that. And I thought, before we did the presentation, wouldn't it be amusing to run that clip ahead of time? And they were nice enough to let us do it.
Yeah.
And we had looked at entertainment complexes in other places and studied them, and really thought that stadium seating theaters were a different product than Hawaii had to that point. And if we did a great stadium seating theater, it would be very competitive with the existing theaters that were there. And Pacific had a bunch of other theaters.
Yeah.
So a little bit, they were competing with themselves.
Yeah.
And at the end, we had a battle between landlords because we had ourselves, and then we had the then owner of the site that's now Walmart. And we both wanted the theater. And so we got the theater company, Pacific, called one day and said, look, if you'll agree to do it and pay us this much if you don't do it, then we'll do it. Well, I said, so it's like I'm a tit for tat kind of guy, and Jay, you and I have been back and forth on this kind of stuff. So I said, well, if we agree to pay you if we don't do it, will you agree to pay us if you don't do it?
Perfect.
And that's really how the conversation went. And it was a pretty big number at the time.
Yeah.
And the next thing I did was call the Hawaii Community Development Authority, which is our zoning board, and I said, I think this is okay. Can we do this together as a partnership? And I got a favorable response. So we and Consolidated Pacific Theaters bellied up to the bar together. And they signed on as the anchor tenant that started to make that project possible.
Yeah.
Then we had wonderful planning and architectural support from Francis Oda and Group 70.
Yeah.
And then our team.
Yeah. Well, that theater, you must have known it at the time. From the first time the issue came up about putting a theater there, it would revitalize or increase the vitalization of the whole area. It would be a magnet, a mecca for everything around it for blocks and blocks.
We thought it would do that. We had watched what similar complexes had done in other places. We had watched major landlords in other places incorporate them as a development plan, and part of a development plan. I mean, and then when we were dealing with our planning process, we were really looking at the question of, okay, it's like, where do we, that's like we as the residents of the island of Oahu, where do we go to have a night out, to walk around in a real place, and to see a show?
A city.
And we couldn't answer that question really well.
Yeah.
And we said, Oahe Street is a real street. It's in a really cool place.
Yeah.
And then we also had 22 restaurants in operation at the time nearby. And we said, if all those people come to the theater, that's going to be really good for the restaurant business.
Yes.
And it was.
It was. Yeah.
So that was like the thinking. And I can't say enough about Jan Yokota and the Hawaii Community Development Authority, but what good partners they were. Governor Cayetano was supportive, and the community bought in.
Yeah. What I get out of this, though, is the fact that central in a project like this for you to design and to create it is the notion of partnership. Everybody is a partner. Talk about that, will you?
Well, see, you can't do development in Hawaii unless you understand that. I mean, my real thought is, even if you think you have zoning, you never really have zoning in Hawaii. Because you need to bring the community along, you need to bring the zoning board along, and you need to have talented planners, and you need to do something that you start out thinking is good for community.
Yeah. So before we go to...
And then at the end of the day, and the community doesn't always like to hear this part, at the end of the day, suckers got to make money. Got to get a return on your investment. Otherwise, I have to bring the board and the owners along. What's the point of doing that?
Yeah. So it's a balance.
It's a balance. It's a giant balancing act, and it's not easy to do. And I admire developers that have done big projects in Hawaii, and there's a whole lot of them right now.
Yeah. This is really exciting to talk to Mitch Dollier.
Yeah, well, it's fun to talk to Chief Fidel.
We're going to take a short break. We're going to come back, and then we're going to talk about how Mitch applied the lessons he learned in Kaka'ako, in Kaneohe, or rather in Kailua, and we'll see how that played out. Okay, that's Mitch Dollier, Harold K.L. Castle Foundation, here in Community Matters. And yes, captains of industry need jobs too. We'll be right back.
Aloha, my name is Justine Espiritu, and I co-host Hawaii Farmers Series with Matthew Johnson of Oahu Fresh. we talk about Hawaii's local farmers and their supporters. In order to have a vibrant and sustainable local food system, farmers are always the foundation, but there's so many other people involved in the community that help support those farmers. So we bring those folks onto our show every Thursday at 4 p.m. We get their backstory, their history, find out a little more about them, and we find out why they love what they do and their perspective and their advice on how we can continue to have a dynamic and vibrant and sustainable local food system. So we broadcast live every Thursday at 4 p.m. And you can also catch us on Think Tech's YouTube channel as well as Alelo 54. So we hope you tune in and join us. Thank you.
Okay, we're back. We're live with Mitch Dollier. I mean, really alive. Harold K.O. Castle Foundation here on Community Matters, and we're talking about Community Matters because it does. We're talking about captains of industry need jobs too. So I want to sort of cross the mountains with you.
Okay.
And you've had an extraordinary success in the Kaka'ako Victoria Award projects. You've shown the amazing things can happen in making Honolulu a really urban place, which appeals to people, which gives public space to people, which gives them entertainment they never had before, places to walk and talk and enjoy and eat. I mean, this is not really happening before. You created that. Okay, now we go next chapter in Kaneohe. You found a sleepy town over there. What did you do?
Well,
I said Kaneohe
and you meant Kailua.
Yeah.
Okay, the first thing I did was try to understand who was in Kailua to start with. Because there's a community there. Who are they? What do they care about? And how do we engage them for what the future should be? The problem we had in Kailua is the company owned 45 acres of property, which is kind of like half of central downtown Kailua. And it's a testimony to the founder of our company, Harold Castle, who was a great philanthropist and has given the community back and continues to give back through the Harold Castle Foundation. And it's like another topic for another day is the power of philanthropy and what he did, because I sit back and wonder at what he did all the time. But we had this 45-acre parcel, and 15 acres were coming out of 55-year ground leases within 5 years.
Whoa.
And
you took that job.
And yeah, right. And I was like, and actually that was a question. I didn't think I was going to work anymore after I was done at Word. I thought I was done. And then I looked at this, and the family said, well, we'd let you do the foundation too. I said, you really? So they're like, okay, there I'm off to the races.
Family is a partnership too, by the way.
Yeah, no, that's true. And the Castle family has been a great employer and wonderful partners. And the leader that is in the business, J.B. McIntosh, was just an unbelievable supporter. So that made the job, there was more joyful than it could have been. But, okay, we got 15 acres coming back to us with the biggest collection of old rundown buildings I'd ever seen. I thought I had the biggest collection of rundown buildings I'd ever seen when I was in Kaka'ako. And I looked around in Kailua and I said, oh my God, it's happening again. And not only that, all the leases are expiring. And so I knew this meant a potential for 45 acres of very significant change. And I also knew that Kailua had good leadership in place, and there were a number of very good community organizations. I had a bunch of friends over there. I mean, and there were people that I didn't know. And so I realized there was a potential to greatly disturb community because way down deep in our hearts, nobody likes change, with the possible exception of Mitch. It's like I'm a little bit amused by change, but people really don't like change. People like the way things are and they want to maintain the status quo. And so I saw all this change coming. I said to the board, we need to invest in a community-based planning process. How much is that going to cost? I said, we're probably going to end up spending $500,000 to $1 million. And we ended up doing 6 public meetings in Kailua Intermediate School cafeteria on Saturday mornings. Probably had 200 people at every meeting.
Wow.
First meeting, everybody was mad that we owned all this property. How dare we own all this property? And don't you dare change anything. And we love Kailua exactly the way it is. And then we worked through how it really was and worked ourselves through into a strategy over a couple of years. And we had, I mean, Francis Oda was a magnificent planner and a great facilitator that has way more patience than me. And it was good that he did. And we ended up with a strategy that while everybody in the community didn't agree with, everybody knew about.
Yeah.
And so we started from a place about 18 months later where we were going to carry out a plan. And that's what we were doing, rather than surprise, here comes 15 acres of new stuff. And that was what we tried to do.
It's information, familiarity, transparency, all that. And if you bring people in, some of them will resist, of course, because it's changed.
Right.
But others will come along and say, gee, he must have a good reason for doing that. Why don't we, let's see what happens.
Explaining it, bringing people in and explaining it to community is a developer's responsibility, so you can create the best possible construct against which the political community can do decision making.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's like the job. And quite frankly, I made a whole bunch of friends in Kailua that I didn't realize I was going to meet. And the people in every job, and this starts in my old law firm, the people in every job are what makes the job.
Yeah, and what makes life in general, don't
That's
you think?
exactly right. That's exactly right.
So now Kailua, what can you describe in your eyes what Kailua is like today?
I think a relatively big majority of people are okay with what's happened. I think traffic isn't as dramatically worse as everybody thought it was going to be. I think people were disappointed along the way that we didn't do it their way. But I think the commercial part of Kailua is more financially successful than it was before. And I think part of it was, as we worked our way through the process, I at least realized that small merchants that provide the life, the livelihood, and I'm talking like Pablo Gonzalez at Lanikai Juice, okay? When I started, we had the only Lanikai Juice. We still have Lanikai Juice. I think that's a big deal. And those type of merchants provide the character of what a community can be. Otherwise, this whole thing is a big homogenized thing. It's like there's a gap on every corner and all that stuff. And that wasn't going to be right for Kailua. That was made very clear in the process.
It's branding and identity.
And
it's the character of the place.
The little guys provide the character.
Yeah.
And I always thought a landlord's job was to bring customers to their front door. And their job was to get them to go inside and spend money. And I thought the way to do that was to provide some anchors that would bring a lot of customers over a long period of time. And at the same time, create a whole lot of jobs for Hawaii residents.
Yes. Which takes us to our next subject.
Yes, sir.
So in this building, Pioneer Plaza, it's a very friendly building, you'll agree.
Right.
People say hello to each other.
Yep.
They have real conversations.
It was fun in the elevator coming up. It was fun seeing Governor downstairs and all that stuff. It's
all of that. And I'm walking in the lobby and there's Mitch Dollier and we get into this conversation. He's like, I remember it like X marks the spot. I could show you where we met that day.
I remember, Jay.
And Mitch says, you got to do something about jobs. And I said, you're right. You're absolutely right. And right after this break,
okay,
we're going to discuss, the meat and potatoes of that. What is wrong with the job market? What we can do about it.
I look forward to that.
That's Mitch Dollier, Harold K.O. Castle Foundation, here on Community Matters. We'll be right back. You'll see.
Aloha, this is Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroots Institute, and I want to thank you for watching Think Tech Hawaii. We are delighted to be partners with Think Tech because it gives us the opportunity to bring to you a show every week on Monday at 2:00 p.m. called Ehana Kako. Ehana Kako means let's work together, because we believe that Hawaii will be a better place when everybody works together. And in what way? Well, at the Grassroots Institute, we research 3 basic areas, and we invite guests to come on board from across the country, the state, and the nation to talk about a better economy, a better government, a better society. Now, aren't those things we all want? Indeed. If you'd like to have the latest research in terms of public policy, as well as ways in which we can build a better government, economy, and society, then tune in every Monday on Think Tech Hawaii at 2:00 p.m. for our fascinating guests on Ehana Kako. Let's work together. I'm Keli'i Akina with the Grassroots Institute, and I'll see you then. Aloha.
Okay, we're back. You know, and really regrettable that you guys who are watching this, you don't have the benefit of our discussion during the breaks. That's like a whole other show. So many wonderful issues.
Jay and I haven't seen each other for a long time, and it's really fun to catch up, and I think that's part of what's going on.
So let's talk about, Mitch, let's talk about jobs in Hawaii. I mean, we like to cover, what is really going on. And I always make the distinction between SWAC. SWAC stands for Sports, Weather, Accidents, and Crime, which we learn about on the news.
Right.
And what is really going on, we like to cover what's really going on. And one of the things that's really going on are all the issues around the economy. And you see it busting out here and there, but the bottom line is, we need to offer better jobs. Can you tell the people what you think of the job market, that part of the economy that calls for jobs?
What got me worried, Jay, about this whole topic was, as I read the paper and watched what was going on, it seemed like there was a new special interest group that popped up every day that opposed jobs. We can't burn cane anymore on Maui. GMOs are a bad thing. We don't like the military here. We don't really like Japanese tourists or any other tourists. They should get out of town. And pretty soon...
Don't forget TMT.
Pardon me?
TMT.
Oh, and we don't like the telescope.
Yeah.
And, when I looked at all of those, I started to get worried about, well, who's out there in the world that's going to stand up for jobs? And 2 or 3 different occasions, I've listened to young Hawaii kids, born and raised, off to the mainland, want to come home, saying, well, where's the jobs? And I'd like those guys to meet the people that oppose jobs. And it's like, the TMT thing is really interesting to me in a sense, because when I used to be on the Hawaii Business Roundtable, the Roundtable and University of Hawaii worked together to try to bring science and research jobs to Hawaii, because they paid really well and they were for smart people. And quite frankly, if we filled Hawaii with smart people, that's a really cool thing. Yes. And all that's going to take is educating our people well, because we got it all here already.
Yeah.
But we need to provide the jobs for them. Well, President Greenwood at UH and Rich Wacker from American Savings at the Hawaii Business Roundtable were working on a partnership when President was here to bring and recruit more science-based jobs. And we need to continue that effort. Now, TMT, to me, it's like, I thought TMT had checked all the boxes. I was involved in TMT through our senior senator's office in the beginning, met them, loved the idea personally, and they spent 6 years doing community work, were giving back to community. Remarkably, there was more than $1 million a year that was going to go into the community every year from that. And I'm like, well, that's a really cool thing, I thought. And because they had spent the 6 years in community, I thought they were probably okay. And it's bubbled into a bigger issue than, at least to me, it should have been. Because they'd spent the time, they'd done the stuff. Now, everybody deserves to be listened to, but when there'd been a 6-year process with a lot of listening, silly me thought that was enough. And then I lay that on top of, and I tend to be okay with GMOs. I was educated in Iowa, went to the University of Iowa College of Law School. Some of my law school classmates work for the Iowa Farm Bureau. I get calls and emails from friends saying, what's going on with GMOs out there?
Really?
This is how we're going to feed the world.
Yes.
This is how we're going to make money from agriculture, and you're a great place where we can create a lot of jobs around that idea.
Yes.
Well, when I was a little puppy dog going to the legislature at the very beginning, the head of the Ways and Means Committee of the House, Mamoru Yamasaki, used to lecture people like me about how important agricultural jobs were. And I still feel that way.
Yeah. Remember all the struggle after the plantation, or as they were closing?
Right. And how are we going to replace them?
How are we going to replace them?
No, I remember all that.
Yeah.
And it's like we've figured out some of the ways, and now we want to attack it all.
Yeah.
And it's like, my real point isn't that there aren't good reasons to have public dialogue. My real point is there isn't anybody up there with the jobs t-shirt on, speaking for the people that want jobs, speaking for the kids that want to come home and have jobs. And somebody needs to be talking about that.
So what you got is you got guys who oppose TMT,
Right.
guys who oppose the super ferry, you know, guys who oppose GMO, and if those opposition people have their way, no jobs in any of those areas and others, and there's no countervailing group that says, wait,
Right.
let's have jobs, let's have a diversified economy.
Right.
So,
And I mean, the military is looking to hire more $100,000 a year engineers at Pearl Harbor. I think those jobs are wonderful jobs.
they are.
And I think we should protect them and value them as a community. And I think we should be welcoming of all the jobs that the military provides. I can tell you about Windward, Oahu. K-Bay is the largest employer of civilians in Windward, Oahu. If we didn't have K-Bay, we'd have a way bigger homeless problem.
Yeah. They wouldn't be
So
able
at
to
least
afford
when I
it.
look at the whole economy, and when we look at it from the Harold Castle Foundation point of view, and like, what do we need to help? I mean, if we didn't have employers, and I really look into the face of Harold Castle, and I said, so at the end of World War II, military came to him and they took the keys for K-Bay and slid them back across the table and said, well, we're done because the war's over. This is before Korea started.
A great moment.
And Harold Castle, because I've been told this by Marine Corps generals, took the keys and slid them right back across the table and said, I want you guys here. Now,
Visionary.
at some point, maybe in the future, I'll get to look Harold Castle in the eye and say, you were really smart about that. That was like a great thing that you did.
Yeah.
And he did the same thing at Castle Hospital, and that's the second biggest employer. And there's all the health benefits on top of it. But it's like, at least when I looked holistically at Windward, Oahu, I saw the value of those jobs. And that's a little bit what led me into the dialogue and worry about statewide.
I guess we're talking about not killing jobs that we either have or that could be had so easily.
Right.
But I like also to talk about building jobs that we don't have.
Right.
Out of whole cloth.
Right.
How do we build jobs and thus the economy and thus save the middle class?
Okay, at least to me, the biggest low-hanging fruit is research at the University of Hawaii. And we should do everything that we can to build the research base. And that includes recruiting really smart people that have grant funding from federal agencies to come here. Because on the one hand, we'll look at them and say, well, they make too much money and we shouldn't have them here, and that's not like the Hawaii way. But on the other hand, we bring one of those fancy guys, and they employ 20 to 30 of our kids
Right.
at $100,000 a year
Right.
job.
Great jobs too.
Great jobs, science jobs.
It's not just the money.
No, no, I mean, it's stuff that's gonna make the world a better place.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the biggest low-hanging fruit. The second piece is, how do we support the military better to grow the job market that we already have? How do we make them feel super welcome?
Yeah.
And then the last part is, in this crazy technological world, how do we educate our kids the best way so that they graduate as good citizens, college and work ready, and digitally competent?
Right. We want more than just status quo.
No question.
We want them to, believe in Hawaii. We want them to want to own the universe.
No question.
We want to be ambitious.
No question. And we have a great success story building in the DOE. And we just need to stay the course and keep making it better for all our kids.
Yeah. What about technology in general? You're talking about the university.
Yep.
What about a separate tech industry, such as has been discussed in Kaka'ako for some years?
Well, I think what I'm told is that's like a critical mass thing. Just like when I'm in the real estate industry, if I'm going to try to do retail, I'm not going to get ladies to come unless I have 10 or 15 different places where they can buy clothes. I'm not going to get them with just one store. Technology is the same way.
Yes.
We need to have multiple technology in one place. And we need to have high quality technology. And some of our technology companies are surviving and doing well. And we should support them and welcome them. Can we build an environment that's really competitive with San Jose? Part of what makes San Jose work is they got such in San Francisco is they've got so many technology companies that employment from one entity to another with millennials who seem to not want to stay in their old firm forever.
You've got to have the ability to quit your job in the morning,
Right.
and find another one in what you want to do in the afternoon.
That's what's going on in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And can we build that kind of technology? And then are our ideas, see, the reason I like the whole science and engineering thing is that's going to create ideas, and technology companies will spin out of those ideas. Because some investment bankers from the Bay Area will tell me, well, there's just not enough quality deals in Hawaii. And I'm not sure it's we don't have the capital. I think it's we don't have the deal flow. And that's critical mass.
So
do I like technology? Sure I do.
if you were able to get, those policy points through for the necessary, what do you want to call it, socialization.
Right.
Just like a real estate development project.
Right.
What's the execution of them? What must the legislature do? What must the governor do?
See,
What must industry do?
I'd like somebody in the Department of Business and Economic Development to be assigned to worry about jobs. And when,
Simple as that.
No, it's like, okay, your job, I want somebody wearing the jobs t-shirt. When somebody's complaining about jobs, I want them to show up and say, wait a second, jobs are really important.
Yeah.
Jobs create the ability for people to build great families. They've made Hawaii a great place over the years, and we need to keep them.
It's true. Everybody says, that a great society is a function of how good the families are. But the one step from this discussion I get is, well, how good the families are is a function of how good the jobs are.
That's exactly right.
To have good families, you need good jobs.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And I think that's the function of business. And then how do we grow the business community? How do we encourage them to create even more jobs?
Yeah.
And we should be grateful. Mitch is grateful for every single job we have today. And we should be saying thank you to people that create jobs.
Yeah. Don't forget now, on February 11th, we're going to do this program in a partnership with Mitch. We're going to set up a panel. We're going to talk about jobs, the public policy aspects, and of course the action aspects of how to do it, But I want to ask you my Christmas question.
Okay.
This is a Charles Dickens Christmas question. The ghost of Christmas future.
Yep.
Let's say nothing changes. Let's say the protests against these various economic activities, scientific activities prevail, and there's no countervailing group or power or initiative. What happens to Hawaii then?
I think slowly the vitality of our economy and our job market goes away. We become less relevant to the world. We become a place where the love we have for one another every day and the wonderful spirit of the people of Hawaii gets frayed. And we go in a spiral that the end of the tunnel is Puerto Rico or Detroit.
Puerto Rico with the $82 billion deficit.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like we need a job market because we've made substantial commitments to public employees through health benefits, and pension benefits. If we're going to meet those obligations, which we need to do to keep this place resilient, we have a strong economy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's talk about the flip side. Let's say it happens. Let's say we are able to create jobs that pay, substantially more than entry-level jobs now,
Right.
and substantially more than minimum wage, or fold hospital corners, hospitality jobs, and we can hold our graduates.
Right.
We can make a sort of a renewed middle class, a
Right.
revitalized middle class. What happens then to Hawaii?
Well, first thing, as we're going through that process, we need to keep in mind that this is Hawaii. And what's that mean? I will let the Hawaiian community tell me what that means, and I'm not prepared to define it for you.
Yeah.
But I will remember very clearly a dialogue I had with a kumuhula in Kailua. And I'm like trying to figure out, because the community had said to us, it needs to continue as a Hawaiian place. And she looked at me and she said, Mitch, you're thinking about architecture and buildings. And it's not that. It's people. If there's places where Hawaiians gather, you've created a Hawaiian place. We should never forget that.
Yeah. It's a melting pot.
No question.
Multiple cultures, and that's the strength of the island.
No, it is, and quite frankly, the world's going to look like us soon.
Yeah,
Something I
it
learned.
is.
Something I learned last week.
Yeah.
There are more non-Caucasians than Caucasians in California right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is a good thing.
It's a really good thing.
No. The globalization.
No question. It's a really good thing. And what we all learn from each other, that's part of the wonder of this place.
Well, that's the thing, learning.
Yep.
I learned from you, Mitch.
I've learned from you, Jay. Thanks, bud. Thanks for what you do every day. This is important stuff.
Mitch Dollier, thank you very much. Harold K.L. Castle Foundation, Community Matters, and captains of industry need jobs too. More on this subject, you will see. Thanks
We'll
again.
look forward to that, Jay. Thank you.
Aloha.
Aloha, bud.